Yeah.
They were being homeschooled, and my wife Jackie's wonderful. The older one was being homeschooled. The young one was going to kindergarten, pre-kindergarten. So we just shifted over, and they're actually doing a COVID time capsule. That's what the children are doing right now.
I saw that note she wrote. That was
writing letters to themselves and trying to like capture what is happening from their lens. And I think they've got it figured out better than we do.
Hey, look, it's showtime. Thank you for joining us, everybody. This is True Hoops Bring It In show. We've been looking forward to this one. David Thorpe introduced me to Steve Shenbaum 150 years ago, and we've been friends ever since. How you doing, sir?
Hi, Henry. I'm glad to be here with both you and David. Thank you.
So I'm going to read some highlights of your bio. He's the founder and president of Game On Nation, actually, here's some good phraseology. A nationally recognized communication firm specializing in the use of game dynamics to improve leadership, team building, and positive culture change. Founded in 1997, Game On has pioneered the art of helping sports teams, military personnel, and corporations improve through interactive experiential learning, powered by Game On's groundbreaking MILE or M-I-L-E?
Either way, I would like MILE. It's a nice act. We like acronyms.
So I think I first met you and you had worked with Greg Oden, and the list of athletes that you've worked with is as long as my arm, as long as Greg Oden's arm. Do you want to just do some name dropping?
Wow. I had a joke with like Greg Oden's arm. It's not as long as his career though, and I love Greg. I love it.
Is that laughing? It feels like laughing at.
That was a laugh with, because I have a relationship that I've earned the right, and he's going to join us. I'm just kidding.
Let's call Greg. Greg's next. Yeah.
Back in the day, who was really instrumental was Bill Duffy and some of the agents out in LA, and was able to work with Carmelo Anthony when he began his career, which was a real joy helping. And really the focus was on the transition from the college ranks to the pro ranks. And then you had an opportunity through that experience to work with folks like Yao Ming, and those were some, Brandon Jennings. Those were some that kind of really stood out back in the day when we were doing more media training back in like the early 2000s.
Who's your favorite NBA player?
That is David Thorpe. David Thorpe, because just because I liked his jump shot and I like his humility.
Maybe let me. Oh, you guys, guess what I'm about to remember?
What?
I'm about to remember what I forget every day. It just came into my head. If you have a question for Steve or David or me, please click the little chat button and put it in there. We're gonna do some stuff, talk to Steve for a while, and then we're gonna use your questions. That'd be great. If you would like to ask your question on video, include the word video in your question, and we'll bring you on. Like
what if I have a question?
Shout it out, man. Okay, so I put you on the spot about your favorite NBA player, but instead maybe you could tell us a favorite NBA story.
Oh wow, there's what was interesting years ago, and this is going to be a name drop, and I don't mean it this way. Yao Ming was really trying to work on his communication skills, and also just there was a language barrier to some degree. But if you don't know Yao and you get to know him, you realize he's got an extraordinary sense of humor, and he's really smart. And so we had an opportunity to just work one-on-one, like once a month. I'd fly up to Houston for a couple hours, and we would just work together. And he's full of joy. He's got a beautiful sense of humor. His backstory is fascinating. The academy structure he was born into and sort of lived through, and he talked about that. To me, he was learning media training, and I was learning like culture development and just sort of global awareness. And it was really an experience I'll never forget.
He was maybe the best center in the NBA, and I asked him if he'd ever played pickup basketball, and he said no, never once in his life.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. I had a really neat moment with him on the phone. I was talking him through the speech, and at the end, there's sometimes when you're on the phone, there's a little bit of a hesitation. We didn't have Zoom at the time, and I was like, "Do you have any questions?" And I was a former actor. I did some work there, and I said, "Do you have any questions about the speech?" And he said, "Yes." And I was like, "Oh wow, he's gonna ask me something. I've really got to be ready." He's like, "I really liked American Pie too," and then he hung up. That's what he said. And I said, "Yeah." I go, "That's not a question. That's not a question." He goes, "I very much like American Pie too." Click.
Wasn't that Greg Oden's favorite movie that he told you when you first met Greg?
One of the few. It was so bizarre. Like when there'd be you have to kind of build authority and credibility, which I believe in wholeheartedly. Or Henry, you mentioned that something I had said that I probably took from someone else, but so you earn the right to be heard, and I would I really believe in that. And so, but it's interesting what people put in terms of value. You know, what people put on value, like I would value being a husband and a father and what I'm going through right now in that journey. But they'd find out about Space Jam, and then all of a sudden you're the smartest guy in the room. You know, because you were in 2 scenes with Michael Jordan saying you struck out, Mike, but you look good striking out. And then there's your authority. So whatever they'll value, I'll take it so we can get in the door. You know?
Were you fully in character for that? Do you want to give it one more shot?
You know what? I don't do that bit for free. So I'm not.
Okay, sorry.
And no, don't be sorry, but I'm not. I know there's like at least 4 people watching or listening, and I don't want to make this awkward, but
Yeah.
no, the answer is no.
David, you have 100 Steve stories. Do you want to like tell a favorite?
Oh, sure. So first of all, for the people that will be listening to this on a pod later and maybe haven't known much about Steve, I literally say Steve is like the LeBron James of his industry. He is a real game changer. And I met him and right away I just thought he was the funniest man alive that wasn't a professional comedian, and he wasn't goofy. But I was training a lot of pros. And for the draft, I think maybe the first year I met Steve, I might have had 6 guys drafted that year, but I had 15 guys in the gym every day, and I knew the truth about my players, that they are just people like anyone else. They just have to be really tall and can make a bunch of jumpers. So I brought them to Steve. Steve had this amazing program at IMG, and I don't know that the previous guys running IMG really appreciated the effect it could have on the athletes and how much they love it. So I brought the guys in. And we had a player, I know Steve will remember him. He made the NBA just for a little bit. He was a great player overseas. He was from a rural part of Florida. His name is Xavier Dowdell.
Yeah.
And Xavier played at Virginia Tech. Very, very good player at Virginia Tech. Very soft-spoken, not really country talking, but just quiet and reserved. And Steve does a game where he makes you play a part like as a professor. And you're supposed to be a professor of some subject. And I don't remember if it was ducks or frogs. It was one or the other. And Xavier was the professor of one or the other from like Stanford. And all my other 14 very, very good players were in the room, including a lottery pick and Drew Holiday and all these great players. They had to ask Xavier questions, and he hit the ball out of the park. And he loved it. First of all, he was a very bright guy. And you didn't know it because he didn't even know to feel confident that he could be this person. He was just a basketball player from the middle of Florida. And Xavier was so impressive and so polished. And I've never forgotten that. I knew this stuff would work before I brought Steve in, but seeing Xavier and all of our players reacted so positively because they had been working out with him for a month or 6 weeks, and they had never seen this side of Xavier. And I just love Steve so much. I love Xavier too, but I love Steve so much for letting Xavier show that part of him. And he was being vulnerable and accepted. And what a game changer that is. So I have a lot like that, but that was my favorite one.
Thank you, David. That means a lot. I mean,
Do you remember that day?
Yeah, I do remember. And I actually remember Xavier really well. And what it reminded me was that these young men and women and anyone who's identified specifically for a certain gift and trait, when you can show them that they have other giftings as well, and you can do that in a room full of peers, it actually can be really revolutionary. And I mean this, it's not a feigning humility. I feel, now that I look back on that, David, I was much younger now, I was just a guide and a facilitator. The magic happens not from the instructor. The magic happens from like the young man and the athletes around them, if you're in that environment, to watch them laugh with, to see Xavier from in a different light, and to give them permission to go, you know what? I have a tremendous amount to offer besides a jump shot. And it just takes off. And the best part is just sitting back and watching it happen.
I want you to tell, I don't know if you remember, you're cut me off if you know the story because you've had so many, but I only have one Greg Oden story about you, so I remember it very well. Henry, you remember when Greg was drafted, when he was going through the draft process, he had broken his wrist prior, right? And so Steve was asked to consult with Greg because he was just sick of answering the same question about his broken wrist. And Steve's thing was to make a joke about it. And you'll end the conversation because he was just so sick of answering the same tedious question about his wrist. So Steve's advice to Greg was, when someone asks you about your wrist, just say, yeah, I've decided we're going to amputate the wrist. I'm just going to play with one hand. I'll be fine. And Greg just lit up hearing that idea. And I don't know if he ever did it. I'm guessing he probably did. But I loved that Steve was able to make a joke about something that was causing so much stress to Greg, and it just kind of relaxed him. It's very good advice.
Thank you. You know, I think some of that, Henry, you may wanted to jump in and share something.
Only after you're finished with all of your thoughts.
Yeah, that could be 3 hours, Henry. And I get paid per hour, so this could get tough.
Second money reference noted.
David, you talk about that. It's really important, because I do want to also talk about the power of humor and laughter, even in times like we're living in now, and real life happening in ways that are, just radical. The only reason that joke could potentially work is if Greg felt comfortable with it, and it was his style of humor. There's dry humor, there's sarcasm, there's joyful humor, there's nonverbal humor. So it's also about getting to know the athlete, whoever we're working with, and saying, is this a rhythm that this athlete feels comfortable wearing, and is it authentic to them? And that's what we're trying to do, because one thing about Greg, and not to turn this into a serious run, but it's an important run, is you also have to think about who you're working with and their backstory and their culture, and respecting and earning the right to come in and really listen to what is it you want to accomplish, what are your needs. Tall men in basketball sometimes have different physical confidences or lack thereof than shorter basketball players, simply because when you're 7'3", everyone's looking at you wherever you go. And I thought that was a really interesting thing when I worked with big men. Their style of humor and sometimes their confidence being out in public and communicating was a little different and a little more challenged than some of the young men and women that could walk into a restaurant and no one's going to look at them going, "Hey, it's high up there," or "What team do you play for?" And I always remembered that when working with big men. It was a different rhythm than working with people whose height wasn't so noticeable.
You're getting on this topic of authenticity, which I think is really where the three of our fascinations overlap in a major way, right? So
Yeah.
we did this what year was it that we went down to IMG and went through Train Like a Pro with David?
Like 08, 09.
Yeah,
08, 09, something like that. And then we did a session with Game On with Steve. And to that point in my life, I had thought that media training for athletes was mostly about making sure that you didn't piss off the sponsor or didn't get somebody sued. But then we go into at that time there was a building in the middle of the IMG campus where the Game On magic happened, and we go in there as a group, and it's everything, we're palling around, having a good time. Next thing you know, we're all on the brink of tears, right? We're doing various games. It's all very loving and supportive and great, but I was like, oh, this is an entirely different thing than I had imagined it would be. And we talked about coins, which you can explain better than I can. And a lot of it was, I felt Steve saying to us, what's real stuff about you that you can talk confidently about? That's a good starting point for how you're going to talk to the media, right? How am I doing with which feels to me now, authenticity now feels 10 times more valuable than 2 months ago, because kids buy Hanes or whatever. However it worked in the time of Michael Jordan, it seems like a little bit, rings a little hollow now. It seems like we all need to be a little more authentic now.
Yeah, I think the whole marketing structure is out the window kind of right now. All bets are off in terms of, even challenges to email funnels and all of the things that the world says, hey, this is how you have to reach people. Yeah, it rings different when you're in a global pandemic. But the authenticity part, I don't want the listeners, viewers to think we're going to just talk about deep, heavy stuff. I mean, there's humor involved in this too, and there's joy in this too. You get there. But to me, the theory has always been, if you create a character early on, let's just focus on athletes. And that's what David really brought into my world years ago when we met 12 years ago. If you create a character and you maintain that character and then you become a pretty visible star, you have to maintain that character. And that's just probably, you're just doubled your workload. You already have the focus to be the best basketball player you can be and be a good teammate. You've created a character your rookie year that now you have to maintain, and there's only two things that are going to happen. You're going to burn out, you're going to get exposed. That's just not who you are, And so that was my mission, was to try to find everyone has good qualities in them. Everyone, even folks who you look at and you're like, oh, that guy's a knucklehead. Well, there's maybe a reason they behave that way. I always look for the good. I try to expose it. And then I tell them that is your core drive as you create your career off the court. And then you won't have to make up a script because it's your story.
That's awesome. Greg Oden, he told me all about it. He loved, what was the dance? Crap.
Oh, the line dancing.
Yeah, there were a series of popular movies.
Drumline, or yeah. Why you on this? I can't do it.
Yeah, but anyway, but you made him basically like when he was recovering from his injuries, and he'd be like, yeah, no, but mostly I'm feeling like dancing or whatever. He made a lot of dancing jokes for a while there, and I was like, that's something he really loved. And Mike Conley Jr. too, right? They loved these. They watched a lot of these. It's gonna come to me what it was called, but yeah, I loved that. It's like, here's a thing he was thrilled to talk about. Didn't fit his college public persona, but opened up a part of him that you could made him enjoyable.
Steve really helps you. What he's saying is he's helping people. Forget about athletes. He's helping people get comfortable with who they are, and that uniqueness has value if they're authentic to it, if they're honest with it, if they embrace it. And I called Steve right when this was first happening. This whole virus thing was happening, and I think I called him maybe March 9th or 10th. And I didn't know where this thing was going and how long would be quarantined. But Henry, obviously, you know my kids. I said, I want you to come and spend some time with my kids before they go off to college, because Steve is so good at this process that he can just help regular teenagers deal with the peer pressures and other stresses of college life in a way that I can't as their dad, or their mom can't as their mom, because we're their mom and dad. Steve can immediately give you empathy as a professional that's almost equal to any parent, because he is a parent. I think that's helped a lot. When I first met Steve, he wasn't, and he's just grown as a man. And he can help our kids find that core of who they are that they can bring with them to college, result me and Chrissy want. And we can't do that totally for them because we're their parents. That's how good Steve is I made a phone call and basically said, I'm gonna be forever in your debt if you could help my children out. And he said, well, listen, I charge by the hour, so it's not gonna be cheap. No, of course he didn't.
A third money reference now.
He got offended that I asked for it as a favor. He's like, this is not a favor, this is what friends do. So whenever this thing is over, we're having Steve up, we're gonna have lunch. He's gonna do a session with Rachel and with Max separate, and then I'm gonna try to get him to hire Rachel one day, because Rachel reminds me of his number 2, Blair, who's an amazing woman. And I think it'd be an incredible career to have to work with Game On.
Thank you, David. You know, this may kind of be a natural transition to talk about sort of some of the exercises are not like high flying. I mean, I would love to share some exercises, Henry, with you and David, because I think there's ways to do it digitally. And I think I know everyone's living in this virtual world right now, at least for the short period of time over the next few months. But going back to this authenticity, and I call it a gateway, one of the concepts is one of our foundational exercises, which is coins. And Henry, you mentioned it. And I have to tell you, coins almost was removed from our curriculum because I thought it was so unplugged, so kind of static, that I didn't think it would resonate. And this was before I was a father and a husband. So as David said, I've matured a lot, but I liked the high flying exercises a lot more. I liked the exercises where people are hilarious and laughing and scene based. But what I found actually was the things that really stuck with people were what I call simply complex, and the coins exercise is interesting. I want to share it with all of you guys because it's for all of us. And that is just asking ourselves, like, what is it that we value that makes us shine? What is it we love that have nothing to do with what we do for a living? And we categorize them into 5 categories: people, places, pets, food, and then bonus. Bonus would be anything that doesn't include those other 4 lanes: people, places, pets, food, and then bonus. And what's interesting, let's say we go back to the athlete. Let's say we go back to Greg Oden. We brought his name up a few times. I love Greg. I would stay in contact with him. His career was not what he expected, but he's a good man who had lots of struggles. And that's just life. He's a human being that needs and deserves empathy and compassion. That's it.
Yep.
But when I asked him about his coins, I was fascinated to hear things that I'd never read on ESPN. And I'd never read about him at his time at, was it Ohio State?
Yeah.
And that begins to remind these athletes and all of us, what is it we really do value? Because if you're known for what you do, very often you get reminded of what you do. In fact, Carmelo Anthony at Syracuse for 1 year, I asked him, did anyone ever have a conversation with you on campus for a year? This is a year where he was at Syracuse. Remember, he won the national championship that freshman year. They were extraordinary. He was extraordinary. And he was a prodigy, right? He was a phenom.
Right.
And I said, how many conversations did you have on campus that didn't involve basketball? And his answer was none. I thought that was so radical for a year to be on campus where he really never had a conversation walking past anyone on campus where people would be like, just, of course they wouldn't. You're like, you feel so compelled to be like, hey dude, good luck tonight, you know? And so that I think is part of the layers that we're trying to chip away at.
There's this, like, Nikola Jokic, it's come up a few times in the media, like, is really into horses, which is a perfectly normal thing for a person to be into.
Totally.
But, we see him as the center of the Denver Nuggets. And so it's weird for us to let him break out of that box. But I feel like there's great power in just like, talk to me about horses, Nikola. What's going on with that, right? Like, it's like he lights up in a way that he wouldn't on the topic of, catching the ball in the post.
Bill Russell said, basketball is what I do, it's not who I am.
Yeah.
And that identity challenge is lost on coaches as well as parents. We need to be able to coach the man or the woman, and then the basketball player is a separate entity, and we struggle with that. Coaches and parents both struggle with, they try to combine all identities when they really shouldn't. Although in Jokic's case, I just keep wondering how big is the horse? Jokic is an enormously huge man, and I'm not making fun of him because he looks great. He's lost a bunch of weight. He's this marvelous talent, one of the most talented guys we've ever seen play basketball, literally, almost like the second coming of Arvydas Sabonis. I don't know if he's riding horses, but I have heard a lot about his fascination with horses. And and Steve knows this really well. So do you, Henry. These athletes, they just play basketball for a few hours a day, whatever. That doesn't define who they are. It's one of the best things about social media now is we get to see this totally different thing. I watched a little, Henry, you told me yesterday about LeBron and his Instagram thing, and I can't find the Instagram live. I've only seen
Steph, not LeBron.
Oh no, okay, Steph. That explains it. So I saw LeBron thing where he's playing cards with his family and he's talking, and it's fantastic. Yeah. It's just funny and real. And
social media, social media has allowed these coins to just explode.
Yeah.
Even before Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, which was when I was teaching this more, it was fascinating. And here's what I'd share. The players would always ask me, even when we do job interview training now for young people, just because we do a lot of work outside of the sports, they'll ask me the same question, which is, hey, Steve, what are they going to ask me in the interview? And I say, first of all, I don't know all the questions they're going to ask you, and I don't want you to sound rehearsed, but I can promise you that one of the questions or the entire interview will be based on this statement. Tell me about yourself. And we must be prepared to answer that statement, because we'll get it for the rest of our lives. When you go on a date, it's a big tell me about yourself. When you go to a job interview, it's a tell me about yourself. And when you go to any social interactions, which, let's be honest, y'all, we don't all love those social interactions all the time. And I teach communications, and sometimes my wife and I are like looking at each other. I'm like, we gotta go. But the tell me about yourself statement can be easily leaned into if we have our coins in our pockets. And then we say, wow, where do I begin? Well, I may want to go with an In-N-Out Burger, which is a coin of mine from growing up in LA. Or I may want to go with that, my brother's a firefighter. Or I may want to go with my love of Northwestern University. Something along the way will intrigue the other person, and potentially we can have some coin connection. I mean, I look at the three of us on this screen, you and Henry and David, and we have coin connections. I think it's one of the reasons that we enjoy spending time together.
Well, how would you connect when you work with the U.S. Army, for example, and then the New York Yankees or the Pittsburgh Pirates? Like, what are the commonalities, and maybe what are some of the differences when you're dealing with those very different entities?
Yeah, we call it the Venn diagram. It's a great question, David. And first of all, they all are high performance environments, all of them. So high performance cultures have similar mindsets. So you mentioned U.S. Army, you mentioned the Yankees. What was the other one you mentioned?
Pirates.
The Pirates. Okay. They're all high performance cultures. Another one you have to keep in mind for that is there's a predominantly male environment there, especially the Pirates and Yankees. So you have to know your audience. It goes back to sort of knowing your audience, understanding their high performance cultures. And if you can earn their trust early, all of these groups would like to improve. I've never had a high performance.
That's a really important point. Great
They
point.
all want to improve.
Yeah.
Does that mean they're going to love you? No. Dude, I walk into some of these environments and look at me like, who are you? And I'm not looking to be liked. I'm looking for my message to be received. And that was a huge shift for me when I went from not wanting to be liked, which is really, really hard, especially as a former actor, as a human being who does like affirmation, you know, and to go from not wanting to be liked and instead hoping that your message is received is a huge shift. But like I said, high performance cultures want to feel like they have something that they can take away and be improved. They all have a tremendous desire to grow, and you just have to know your audience. And once we know our audience, we can establish curriculum that satisfies them in a more customized way.
There's this coin thing. I still think about it all the time. There's a reason I'm talking about it a dozen years later. What I interpreted from this was coins go in your pocket, right? Like, so here are a few things that are core to me that I really value. I remember talking a lot about just behind me inside that window. There's this giant table, which you asked us like, what's an important possession to you? And this is the table where we gather. This is where the Abbott family gathers and our friends and family, and a lot of our most important experiences happen at that table. And that's a coin that I have in my pocket. And if you think about being an aspiring Pittsburgh Pirate or in the Army, right? You're feeling very much competitive, like you got to beat people out and you got to win. And every opportunity to win is a little stress point for you, right? Whereas like, if you just have, I'm about these coins. I have these 5 or 6 things in my pocket. And that means there's 15, 20, 1,000 topics that can come up that like, I'm gonna let that go.
Yeah.
Right? That's not a thing for me. I don't have to win that, right?
Yeah.
Which I think makes you feel a lot readier to take on things that do matter because you're not stressing every little competitive moment.
You say it beautifully, and you guys are seeing it in almost different ways, which is beautiful. Like David, you see it more as an identity and relationship, which it is, and Henry, how you're interpreting it is more how to use these coins to avoid this sort of really dangerous mantra in sports, which is it's life and death out there, which it's not. In fact, ironically, we are dealing with life and death right now. We are literally dealing with that. So these terms, like it's a war out there when you're playing basketball, or it's life and death out there. Those are really dangerous lies. Yeah. And one way to combat that lie is to remember that you have values. I tell people when you go to a job interview, look around the desk. You'll see all the person's coins. You'll see pictures of their children. You'll see a picture of I remember years ago when I was an actor going to a Paramount or Warner Brothers, one of the two, and I was very nervous and young, and there was a guy named Steve Stark, and he was the casting director, and there was a picture of his son and a hockey stick behind him. I wasn't trying to trick him. I wasn't trying to do some weird, like, what's your favorite color? Blue, so is mine. This is so weird. We have a lot in common. It's just so lame.
I mean, that is a great trick.
Oh, God. Oh, here we go. But I said, hey, do you enjoy hockey? And he's like, and he lit up, and off we went. So I do believe it's also a way to combat these irrational fears, Henry, where we start to put value on things that don't deserve that level of value. Sports is important. I'm sorry to upset anyone who's listening. It's not life and death.
Well, and we've had this, a different guest, a different setting on this show. We talked about like, the stress hormones of like cortisone, et cetera. Like, it's not bad to have them, but it's bad to have them all day, right? Like you want to up and down. These are protective in short doses, right? So I feel like a little bit of another way of saying what I was stumbling through earlier is, okay, so if you're trying to make the Pittsburgh Pirates, you got to get up for some stuff, right? You do have to hit the ball. You do have to make plays. You do have to answer the job interview questions, but you don't have to sweat every single moment of the bus ride, right? You don't have to be winning things then, right? If you have, to me, it's a calming thing to have your coins in your pocket and say like, I'm going to stand up and argue on behalf of Kansas or whatever the heck matters to you, right? Yeah. Not every jerk who comes down the aisle shouldn't be able to rile you, right? You should be, you can confine your concerns to the things that are important to you, I guess.
Yeah. And we've sat here for, 10 minutes talking about an exercise that I almost threw out of my cachet. And it brings up something else that's very important is we've complicated this way too much.
You know what one of your coins is?
What?
Coins.
It's very meta theater, Henry. It's like Matrix. It's very Matrixy.
Steve does a really great game that has.
Let's do one.
He can't do this one though. He does that one game, Henry. Remember you brought Steve into to talk to all the 90 some odd people at the ESPN NBA for our preseason kickoff. And he does the game where the 8-3 game, where if you're on one side of the room, you're a 3, which is very mild mannered, and then the other person's an 8, which is much more bold and brave and authoritative. And then they change sides, and you've got to play both sides. And I won't say his name. I'm still really friendly with him now. But this is a very large man. When he was an 8, he was a bully. And he's not a bully at all in real life. But that's what he thought that being an 8 meant, was being a bully. And he and I still talk with this sometimes. I think Steve has a real gift to helping people understand how to be that person. You can be authoritative and not be a bully. You just got to give them the skills to do it. Well, how do you do that? You first have to get them the value. If you want to be authoritative and you're a bully, you're just bossing people around. They're not going to get it. You have to first value. I want to be able to be the boss and not be a bully. And people aren't even thinking that deeply. And I think for athletes, in fact, I thought about Steve. Sam Mitchell, to this day, is in the media. And when Sam was on NBA TV after first getting fired from Toronto, he was a delightful man. I loved Sam. Then he became an assistant coach again, and every player loved Sam. And then he got the Minnesota job, and he went to being the bully. And from day one of his press conference, he beat up the press that he was initially on their side. And I felt like that guy needs Steve so badly. He doesn't know how to be the boss. And yet I know he's got it inside of him because I saw those years in the media where he was delightful. There's a value to learning that I think athletes would benefit. We've talked about this on the show, Henry, in the last few weeks. Athletes need to be given those kinds of tools to not be so confrontational, and sometimes they bully for that reason. And we know who these athletes are. We see them when they try to bully the press, as do some coaches. It's a mistake.
Why are we talking about Greg Popovich all the time?
Right.
But again, we're talking, if people aren't familiar with this style of curriculum, it's not like some like ridiculous theater game. We're talking about coins in 853, and I'm going to share with you guys in a second an exercise called triple play. But David, I think going back to what you were saying, I don't know if and I'm not trying to like remove myself from this conversation. It's just I don't know if they just need Steve. And you both are such encouragers of mine, and I want everyone who's listening and watching to know that. I honor you both because you have had my back in goodness and in messiness, and have had my back when I was growing as a businessman. I never forget that. But so it's really important. But they don't just need Steve. They need anyone who can not just tell them what to do, not to show them what to do, but to move them into doing that.
Right.
And that's why I actually believe in the art of simplicity. And it's like what I think Abraham Lincoln was. I would have written you a longer letter, but I would written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. Right. And there's something very challenging about being concise.
Yeah.
Henry, as a writer, you have that gift, and David, you write as well. But even as a coach, you have that gift, and I hope as a teacher, I have that gift. And it takes years to take something that takes a lot of information and make it concise.
I apologize to Henry. I apologize to Henry for how terrible a writer I am compared to him, because I feel so bad for the people editing me. And he was so sweet about that. There's no such thing as anything other than lots and lots and lots of editing. This is the game. What did I know? I've been writing at ESPN for 10 years, but it wasn't the same as what it is for True Hoop. And he made me not feel as bad and stupid that I need to be edited a lot in order to be to get my point out more simply. And as a coach, I'm always trying to get a 12-word drill into an 11-word drill to a 9-word drill. The most information I give in the least amount of words possible is what I do all the time as a coach. And it's the same way as writing, the same way as presenting. The simpler we make it, the better off we are.
I think we're going to come out of this pandemic and our world's going to reset. And there's going to be obviously so many things much bigger and grander than what I'm about to say. But I think one of the sub stories is going to be brevity. I think people are going to spend about 2 months on Zoom. They're going to realize that 2-hour Zoom calls are draining. They're going to realize a thank you note's important. They're going to realize that leading their team, communicating with their families when everyone is isolated, takes intentionality. And you're going to have some level of brevity and an ability to be concise. That's what I'm learning, because we don't have the luxury of having a captive audience. When you're in other people's presence, you have a captive audience. If they're in front of you in chairs, they can't just walk away. If someone goes to the restroom at synagogue or the temple during the sermon, they really had to go to the bathroom. You know, if they got up and moved away, right? Now people are just like checking their phone and you think they're taking notes on a Zoom call.
I was literally about to make a long-winded point, but now I can't do it.
Irony. Well, that's while I'm doing it, then I really want to acknowledge this because it's just, if anyone's listening or watching, we're not gurus. I'm aware that even when I talk about brevity, I go too long. Like it just.
Oh, we are too, Steve.
You know, let's play an exercise. But I
Okay.
want to also point out, 853 was born out of empathy. 853 is a concept that I created because when I was working with tall athletes, I felt very uncomfortable lecturing them in front of other people because they'd have to bend down, and it looked like a really weird coach dynamic that I didn't want to put them through while the reporters were watching them. So we actually created a numbers game. So when I wanted Greg or Yao or some of my taller athletes to step up and be more energetic, I just gave them a number call and no one in the room knew what we were doing. So I just wanted kind of to understand the birth of that came from a desire to take care of others. And usually if you go from that lens, you have a better chance of success. All right, considering all three of us, especially you and I, David, love our words verbally, and Henry loves his words written. Let's do we'll do a triple play. Okay, these are the rules of the game. And viewers, listeners, you can share this and play this at home with significant others and kiddos and all of it. Just don't start a company called Game Off because that would be fun. Hey, I have this great idea called triple play. My company's called Game Off. Where'd you get it? I just came up with it.
I'm sure there's a money solution to that. Like, there's a way we could give you money and do that, right?
Henry, that's the fourth time you've talked about
Henry's very money focused. He's very money centric.
It's a greed and pride issue, Henry. And this is not a podcast. This is an intervention on you right now for your money issues. Okay.
I don't mean to interrupt your brilliant game, Steve, but I did once take you to dinner. And afterwards, at the ESPN restaurant, so it was in Disney, and I grabbed the check, and Steve's like, no, you're not paying for it. I said, Steve, I invited you, I'm paying for it. And very, very subtly, he just grabbed the waitress and whispered, I'll take the lobster to go, please. It was always about money for Steve, too. It was really, I use that line all the time, Steve, all the time.
I'll tell you what, thankfully no one's listening to this because these are awkward.
Yeah, it's a relief. It is.
All right, let's go. Triple play.
Okay, triple play. So here's how it's going to work. Okay, let me talk about the focus of the exercise. The setup of the exercise is we're going to focus on sharing the space and listening. We're going to tell a story. We're going to tell that story, and it'll be this rotation. David, you'll go, then Henry, you'll go, and then I'll go. And we're going to tell that story one word at a time, okay? The goal is not to be epic and brilliant. The goal is not to trump and one-up each other, okay? The goal is to tell a story and have it be grammatically correct, okay? Have the sentence make sense, and period is a word. So if you happen to land and you want to just finish the sentence, you can say period, and then the next person goes on. And we'll talk about lobster rolls. Okay, David, we did not plan this. Lobster rolls is the topic. We're going to tell a story about lobster rolls. And by the way, all three of us are being put on the spot right now, so I'm in this with you. Okay, and afterwards we'll talk about what muscles this is developing and what does it do to us when we're all like viewers or listeners. If you can't see, Henry and David are so locked in right now.
What did you say?
You guys are so locked in right now.
I know.
I was like, is it okay to close my eyes? I kind of want to really.
But even that dynamic of saying we're going to play an exercise together, it's one word at a time, it engages people without you having to scream, everyone listen. Like those statements are dinosaurs. That's my whole point is all we got to do is say, hey, we're in this together. Let's play a game together. You've got to do one word at a time. Now everyone's like irrationally focused. And I think that's something beautiful about that. Okay, lobster rolls is the story. David, you'll begin. Everyone listen. If we happen to mess up and we say a word off of the other word that didn't make sense, don't worry. Just reset. And when we feel like we've answered the question, we'll all take a nod of the head and go.
Tonight
is
a
great
night
to
go
out
and
catch
several
lobsters.
Period.
Oh, it's
fascinating
when
you catch
11
enormous,
gigantic,
and lobsters
fresh
out
of
the
Pacific.
Ocean.
Celebrate it. Oh, you're going to say period, David. Henry.
Harriet.
Nice.
Right. We did pretty good.
There's something fascinating too about just the video of it. Like we're all just a little closer in on the screen. And you know, like, again, if I'm listening to this, I'm not like, oh my gosh, they just told the most epic story. But if you really stop for a second and think, like, what did we have to do? I'm not trying to complicate this. Yeah. This is where David, I'm not the guru's teacher. I'm just letting it happen. You know, what is happening during that exchange? Go for it. And this is what we talk about with athletes and executives, like what is happening?
Yeah.
Like Henry, David,
I'm trying to listen very, very carefully to David. That's what's happening for me.
So one thing Steve does a really good job of is, and this is something I've told this to you, Henry, a bunch. I study comedy a lot, not that I'm funny at all, but that craft is just so incredibly challenging, and as well as improv, which Steve's got a big background in. A big part of his work with people is the improv idea of being always working in the affirmative, right? Accepting. I didn't want to start our game just now with the word surprisingly. I thought that was a hard word to start with. I could have. I wanted to do it tonight. I wanted to keep it simple. We're all supposed to be each other's teammates, right? And so when you're doing an improv game, you're not supposed to, you have to accept always what the other person is doing. That's an incredibly valuable skill to just be mindful of in your daily life, unless you're in a position where you have, like if your kid wants to put his hand in the fire, you have to fight that, right? You have to say no. But if we can generally be more embracing and be mindful of that, it gets much, much easier. And Henry, we had Dan Coyle on with the Culture Code. When you're building culture, which is big reason why Steve's business is going so well with all these teams, is they need to find the skills and teach those players how to build culture. You can't just say, well, we value culture. There's got to be a curriculum to that, to give them the skills. They don't all come from families that know how to build culture. In fact, I would argue exactly the opposite. There's many very divisive families, which is why it's a scary time for some people who can't leave their house. It's not a safe place, as Udonis wrote about in the Players Tribune. We're all lucky if we have a warm place. We have to give the skills to people to be able to embrace in the affirmative what we're getting from the other person. That's why that game is really good. You have to pay attention. George Costanza's actor in Seinfeld, I forget, Jerry Stiller, Ben Stiller's dad, talked about how at Seinfeld, everyone was just so good at listening. There was never a bad day. Every good show says the same thing, right, Steve? Yeah. You've got to be able to listen to the fellow actors. That's what acting is, I think, in a lot of cases, is just listening.
I think some of the other things that come from that experience, Henry, you and I, Dave, we did 3 sentences about lobster. But you do I can start to see certain things that the athlete or the executive is working on, because these exercises don't lie. They talk about in basketball, the ball don't lie. But in these exercises, very few people are familiar with these types of exercises. So you can start to see some things come to the surface, not in a way where you shame the person, but in a way where you might see the person who's trying to always win the game, and sometimes that is not necessary. Or the person who, like you said, David, uses obsequious when no one is going to get obsequious off of that. And there's just an interesting tells, and then you point them out, and you let the coaching staff and the leadership team observe that so they can help manage the group better.
Yeah, I noticed when Steve, how close are you to the Atlantic right now?
We're on the Gulf side of Florida, okay. But 3 hours away.
Okay, so I was like, so how close to the Gulf? I guess is a better question.
Right. Very
not
close.
Far, right?
Oh, 10 minutes away.
But when you're like, he said Pacific, I'm like, oh, that's like in my head, like
no
we're
lobsters in the Gulf.
going Gulf or Atlantic, right? But
well, and that brings. So if you said that, Henry, in one of our sessions, see, this is the beauty. You don't script this out. So right. I'm not the guru. I just have to hear you say that, and then I can say, Henry, let's talk about how you might have things happen during your day that surprise you. You may be planning something out. You may be a planner, and you're planning something out, and then all of a sudden, someone shifts and goes from Atlantic to Pacific. What do? Do you shut down, or do you keep the story going? So what it does, it's a gateway. It's a gateway to actually have good conversations about things we need to talk about, but doing it in a way that I think the audience is a little more warmed up to discuss because they've just gone through a workout together.
Should we try one more? Do you have? Is it okay?
Hey, you want to try one? All right, this
Yeah,
one.
so much.
Well, let me think about what we should do here. All right, this one I wanted to try to include all three of us. We can do this. We'll try to do this quickly. So we're gonna play red light, green light. All right, this is a game about flexibility and adversity and dealing with the word no. Again, what's going on in our world right now? There's tons of no's. Like anyone who's a control freak right now is having a really difficult time because we're not in control. We're dealing with so many factors that are outside of our control. So red light, green light is an exercise. And Henry, I'll
do it. Steve, you do it with Henry. You do it with Henry because I think it'll be really good.
You're gonna ask me in a moment how my day was. Okay. Just how your day, and here your job as my director. You've got to say yes or no after I end every sentence or phrase. You've got to do it quickly. You're a very quick director. If you say yes, I keep my story moving forward. If you say no, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to look at that as a negative. I'm going to receive that as a gift. And I'm just thinking, okay, that door closed. There's another door open, and I'm going to move to another idea off of your no. So yes and no are both good. And you got to go quickly, and don't give me 10 no's in a row because that really jam me up. Okay.
Steve, you said this is a bad time for control freaks, but just for these next minutes, it's great for control.
I know. I'm feeding you. I'm feeding you right now. I'm feeding you. Okay. And Henry, I'm giving you the warning so you don't feel shocked. After you're my director and I go, then we're going to shift and we'll take a pause and then I'll direct you and you'll go. And we're not trying to compete with each other. It's just about practicing red light, green light. And again, viewers and listeners can play this at home. And then we'll talk about why we do this exercise. So we don't just finish the exercise, giggle, and move on, because that's not the purpose. So you have to ask me how my day was, and then yeses and nos after each break. Ready? Go.
Steve, how was your day?
So far, Henry, my day has been awesome.
Yes.
I woke up this morning around 6 a.m.
Yes.
And I decided to go for a little walk.
No.
I decided to go for a crawl.
Yes.
I crawled around my house just to be stealth while my children were sleeping. I actually woke those kids up too, and we crawled together around the pool.
Yes.
And I asked my oldest one to clean the pool with a gutter cleaner.
Yes.
And she was very happy to do that right away.
Yes.
And so she actually jumped in the pool and cleaned in the water. My wife got upset.
Yes.
And so we all decided to have a swim before the sun rose.
No.
And we decided to wait for the sun to rise to swim. So we're still at the pool right now, waiting 2 more hours before we get in the water.
No.
We created our own sun and we rose it ourselves. And we are in the pool because we like to swim better than waiting for the weather.
Yes.
And then I decided to clean the windows around my house.
Yes.
And then I decided to get on the roof and I started to fix some of the roof tiles.
No.
And the roof tiles decided to fix me. I do a program called self-development where I listen to inanimate objects to help improve myself as a human being. Got it?
Yes. Yeah.
Very good.
That was very strong. Very strong.
Henry, this is important. This would be like you writing and editing a story in 20 seconds and sending it to me and be like, do it, Steve. This is not about you do it like that. This is an exercise I do all the time. But what I want to give you permission to do is when you hear no, look at it as a gift. Do not try to go to the most epic thing. I ended up on the roof having no idea I was going to be on the roof. I ended up in the pool, swimming, waiting, creating my own sun. Just know that you have an imagination that's extraordinary and no one's judging. And hopefully this won't ruin the rest of the podcast for the next 2 months. Are you ready?
I think so. I mean, I feel like I just watched Michael Jordan perform, like just flying through the air with the greatest of ease, and now I'm like my 7th grade self with like my shoes on the wrong feet, and like the uniform doesn't fit right, and you're like, son, do you want to play? And I'm like, all right, okay, sure, let's do this.
I'm not the Michael Jordan red light, green light. Second of all, the pressure is off because that was my exercise, not yours. And I think the viewers and audience actually will have massive empathy because they're all going through the same feeling right now that you're going through, which is, dude, Steve did that first. And now he just told Henry to do it without any planning.
Yeah.
And actually you can use that empathy to your advantage. I mean it. Okay.
We're going to be, it's a safe space. We're going to be fine.
And you don't got to talk as fast as Steve does. Steve talks really fast. Just be yourself, Henry.
Too fast. And Henry, tell me about your day, man.
Well, I got up really early because in the pandemic, that's what you want to do. You want to greet the dawn in a pandemic.
Yes. Yes.
And then I made coffee, and today is a special, I made tea.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of caffeine in coffee and we're going a little lighter these days.
Yes.
And after tea, we made toast. My wife's been making this homemade bread. Nothing as comforting as homemade bread.
No.
I like a muffin.
Yes.
A good, like a buttery kind of a muffin. It's not the healthiest thing, but who cares? We got
no.
We're trying to keep it lean. We're trying to We're trying to eat just fruits and vegetables.
Yes.
And we're gonna come out of this. Actually, a friend of mine told me that his wife told him in secret that she wanted to be pandemic hot.
Very good, Henry.
And freeze.
Very good.
Oh wow.
Henry.
Those things are so good.
Muffins are delicious. That's the main.
And by the way, the muffin switch was your best moment.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Very good. You feel
Very
okay?
good.
Take care of you. I had your back.
You were very nice to me. Yeah.
That's
You
the
did.
whole point, right?
The keenness of your listening. I'm like Steve is listening to me, like nobody's ever listened to me right now. Like that was nice of you. Thank you.
Well, again, it goes back to that sort of empathy of when you're putting someone through an exercise. David, if you're putting someone through one of your basketball drills, Henry, if you're working with someone on their writing, and I am going back to your gifts, I think that the person who's developed that muscle should have a tremendous empathy for the person they're working with. Tremendous. And I think actually the pressure's higher on you to write well, Henry, and it's higher on you, David, to coach well, and it's higher on me to do these improv games. When you guys say you're going to have a funny guest on the podcast, I'm not sitting there going, yeah, I'm funny. I'm sitting there going, man, that's a lot of pressure to be funny. So in some regards, you working on that gift that is not a regular rhythm in your daily life actually gives you more opportunity to impress and grow. So my only feedback would be you have a really brilliant sense of humor. Your mind is extraordinary. You have so many ideas. You almost have to edit down your file of ideas to get to the no, which I found very interesting. I could see your brain working really fast. And I love this.
That feels right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these games don't lie if you stop and just stop and say what you saw. And that's what I saw, even though we were on a screen.
You know what I'm feeling these days a little bit is a lot of our lives are about trying to be good at things, right? And lately I've put quite a lot of time in something I'm really bad at, which is mountain biking, which my son wanted me to get into. It's his greatest passion. And I would drive him to where he would mountain bike with my friends, and then I would run because that's what I know how to do. But eventually one of my friends was like, here's a free used mountain bike, just bike with us, which seemed weird not to at that point. So I've spent every weekend of the last 6 months going to do something that I'm terrible at. And now it's my favorite thing. Like it's fun to be, pushing 50 and like, I just put a bunch of time into something that at no time do I feel like, oh, I got this, right? Everyone, I'm like, we'll see how it goes. But it is fun. I feel like that's the attitude I like of like, yeah, just plunge in. Like maybe you'll suck at it, but it's okay. Like just do it.
I think what you just said is important. I knew we were going to get to the heart of something. We weren't going to just talk about be funny and improv games. This time that we're going through is extraordinarily humbling for everyone. There's some fear to it. There's an unbelievable concern that transcends any of my first world problems. And I want to be really clear about that.
Right.
People ask, how's your family? Like, we're healthy right now. Like, that's the least of it. There's just a radical thing happening in our world. But through that humility, Henry, I think there is, and I'm not trying to teach people how to like handle their pandemic. Like everyone says, I'm a guru in this. No, you're not. It's unprecedented. How can you be a guru in something that's unprecedented? That's completely counterproductive or counterintuitive. But the idea that like we're all humbled and we've kind of lost control, and I'm going through the same thing. I am learning how to deal with some technology that it was way beyond my skill sets. And I've felt very second in my company of late. And it's been a really hard thing for me because look, the three of us are in our 50s. We've had some tremendous opportunity, tremendous privilege, and we've had some success in our careers. And now I'm sitting here talking to my young staff members, and they're like walking me through as if I'm an 8th grader, how to turn off my default setting to do a Zoom call so I don't see my instant message show up, right?
Now you're Michael Scott.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and so that I just, if there's some
Oh no, Judy's chiming in. I have no idea what that's like.
I have no idea what that's like. It's great. That's Henry's producer. So that's what I'm dealing with. But I think there's something beautiful about being in the middle of our lives and trying something new and being okay with it and not worrying about perfection. So
yeah.
Well done, Henry. I'm red light, green light.
Thank you. We're almost done. Randy had a good question here, which I think we should go back to, which is basically, what do you do when you meet an athlete and they're super skeptical about you and what you're going to teach them? How do you handle that?
That's so good, Randy. Thank you. Something I used to say a lot, depends on with the setting we're meeting in. It's a lot of factors come into play, but basic concepts. I I try my best not to be this guy. Yo, I feel you. What's up, man? I know what you're going through. Like, I can't stand the forced connection, and neither can they. They can smell it a mile away. So I do not feel any athlete. I don't know what they're going through, especially if we have different age and we have different culture and we have a different socioeconomic history. Like, I do not go with that, yo, I feel you. I found, Randy, that almost all the athletes, they love to laugh and they want to be improved. So, and you got to trust that that's going to happen. The other thing I'd say is don't rush it. Sometimes I meet some of these athletes and you're at like the NBA pre-draft, you're in a lobby of a hotel. You don't have to win them over in the first 5 seconds of the interaction if it's not there. So don't force it. So I would say don't force it. I would say use humor if it's appropriate, because young people love to laugh. And also, can you show them some level of value? Those are the 3 things I try to stay on if I'm interacting with them one-on-one. If I'm in a group setting, that's a little different. I've been brought in, so there's a little bit of authority. I try to immediately, within about 5 minutes, strike 2 things, a balance of empathy and authority. So when I'm in a room full of anyone, and believe me, when I walk in as a former character actor to a room full of anyone, there's going to be some skepticism, unless it's like Henry, you bringing me into like ESPN writers, David introduces me, Jay Adonde's there. I've got a lot of familiarity. But when I don't have that, I try to always remind myself, show empathy and show authority. And if you can find that combo, that usually creates a nice sound to begin the training.
Excellent. We have a little tradition of Gerard joins us for a question on video every single show so far. He's 100%, even though we changed the time of today's show. No, we're not changing Gerard's presence. There we go.
You gotta maintain that average, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Gerard, I love your backdrop.
He's in Paris, right?
I am.
Okay, good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks, Steve. So it's interesting. I did a podcast with Coach Thorpe last night, and he said you were going to be on, and I meant to Google you, but got distracted. So the minute we turned on today and I saw your face, forget about all this great stuff you're doing with athletes. You were in the greatest television show of all time, Beverly Hills 90210.
That's it. That's the authority. Gerard, you call me afterwards. We'll do our own side deal, because David and Henry,
I love it.
and I just put them on mute. Gerard, it's you and me, because these guys are getting old.
They don't know.
You know, my love language is verbal affirmation.
It was, and you were the bellman. I remember you had to tell Tiffany Thiessen that she had to go talk to the manager because you didn't pay her bill.
Gerard, seriously, you watched way too much TV back then.
Way too much television. Way too much.
Oh my gosh, you're in. See, what Gerard just did is he created empathy and authority right there, and served me with a little bit of pride. I love it.
Win-wins, my friend. No, but thank you. Your talk was awesome. I really appreciated this.
Gerard, how many scenes of 90210 do you have in your instant recall? Like all of them?
Henry, just about all of them. Like, I don't want to bore everybody with how much television I consume on a regular, like even old stuff, right? And I always go back to old things. And my therapist always says it's because you know it's comfortable to you and you know what the ending is, right? So there's no mystery. So especially now when it's like I'm all crazy, I don't know what's happening. Oh, I'm gonna go watch something I know what's going on. Makes me feel good. So yeah.
Well, that was my first big gig when I got to LA. I played the bellman on Beverly Hills 90210. Thank you for that. That's literally 25 years ago. Thank you for that recall.
You are welcome, sir.
25 years ago, and Gerard got young points for it on this show, which was amazing.
You're with 50-year-olds, yeah. You're our future, my friend. You're my retirement plan. Don't mess it up.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. We will be back at the regular time tomorrow, which is 11 a.m. Eastern. Steve, you're the best. Thank you so much.
I needed this more than you know. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, David. Gerard, good to see you. Appreciate you all very much.
Take care, guys.
Bye, guys.
Take care, guys.
All right.